Welcome back, and today we'll be reviewing the brand new Oknife Aion. This is a Kickstarter campaign, and it should be live by the time this video drops. If you are interested in picking up one of these, I will have a link down below to the Kickstarter campaign. This right here is an Ostap held design, and I knew it right off the bat. It's got a lot of his design cues. You know, he does a lot of those very streamlined, gents tactical style knives. I see the symmetry from front to back on the knife, something that he's known for as well. And I call this a large, like I just said, gents tactical knife. At 8.08 inches, it has a 3.48 inch drop point blade. This one is in Nitro V stainless steel, and it says on the site this is a DLC coating. Got some excellent fine cut jimping up on the spine. I mean, that's my favorite type of jimping. It grips the finger nicely without being overly aggressive. You know, if you don't need it, it's not uncomfortable. You have a fairly acute tip there, not overly dainty or anything. If you want to do a little twisting and turning, you should be fine, but it's going to be great for piercing, and it's not too high to where I can't use that tip to do fine detailed work, so should be a fairly versatile blade. You got definitely enough belly to do cuts on a flat cutting surface rather easily. Your sharpening choil plunge grind starts about right there where my fingernail is, so you're going to have a couple of sharpenings, maybe three, before you'll start to run into this thicker portion, and you'll either need to do something about it or just run into that plunge grind, whatever you choose to do. You do have, I'm not going to really call it a top swedge, I'm more going to call it just a bevel right here that does give it a nice little visual effect. Your blade stock thickness on this one is coming in at 0.12 inches thick, and it has a high flat grind. You got a small portion of flat right here and kind of goes into like a slicer grind, full flat up here in the front. It comes down to around 20 thousandths behind the edge at the thinnest portion. So as long as this one's super sharp, it should be super slicey. Let's find out. This knife came with a fantastic edge out of box. That's pretty much every Oknife I've gotten so far. Nice crisp edge. It's slicing really well. And even though that tip is a little bit higher, it's a long blade, so it's a very gradual belly. So I had no issues sliding out of the cut at all from turning my wrist. And, you know, even though it's not as thin as some of these knives, it's still, being that it's got a good edge, still performing really well. Now we're testing the ergos, and I was a little worried because this is a narrow handle, but it is thick enough. It's like either 0.5 or 0.51, but it's like 0.86 wide. So while it was comfortable, I kind of feel the pocket clip ramp just a little bit. I was still able to get a lot of force, but you're gonna fatigue your wrist and forearms a little bit quicker because of how narrow it is. Not a big deal, but then we get to the half inch of rope, and once again, this rope is riddled with that hard glue, but I will say the Aion muscled through it. I'm sure it probably was pretty rough on the actual edge itself, but you know, it got through it. That's all that matters. You definitely have enough belly to get through this without a problem. It was actually fairly easy because it's a long drawn out belly. Pinch grip was comfortable. You got enough thickness in those handles to get a comfortable grip. And yeah, like I said, unfortunately this piece of rope had a good bit of that hard glue in it, and that's, you know, that's just part of it now, and we had got away from it for a while, but you know, that's just life. We cut, you know, the average amount of rope with it, and it did well. It didn't feel like it was falling off. You know, sometimes it did, but that was, I think, more so just that glue. And I decided to use the belly on the first one just because this piece of leather was pretty dried out. That's about it. And not much drag was being created by the DLC coating. And one thing I did notice about this coating is if you, once you're done cutting stuff, if you see like wear marks and stuff, just put some oil on it and it'll be fine. I thought it performed well. I did run into some of that hardened glue in my sisal rope testing, and I'm curious to see if it did anything to that front portion of that edge. You know, we definitely got some hang-ups. And the front is still, you know, you got a working edge up there, but you do have some hang-ups. I don't know if it's caused by that glue or not, or just getting dulled out from cutting multiple pieces of sisal rope. But I do know after about the third sharpening, you're going to get max performance out of this Nitro V. At least that's how it seemed after sharpening up the Duron several times. Now let's touch on the ergos. You have a very neutral handle here, kind of like a broomstick shaped handle. You just have this little kick down right here that acts as like a choil. And then you have the flipper tab acting as a guard. You do have that jimping right there, so it does kind of grip the finger so you don't accidentally slide up on that blade if you have to pierce into a bag of potato chips. No matter which grip I hold this one in, I found it to be very comfortable. Now, it's very narrow in the width department at 0.86 inches wide, and it's about, I think, 0.5 or 0.51 inches thick, so the thickness isn't bad. But the only reason I'm saying that is because it was comfortable, but whenever you're gonna be cutting hard into stuff, you're gonna be squeezing this a lot tighter, and it's gonna cause your wrist and forearms to get fatigued a lot quicker just because of how hard you gotta squeeze it. But other than that, I didn't have any discomfort from the pocket clip. With my medium-sized hands, I didn't really notice it. This reverse pull grip like this is nice and comfortable. And then you got a nice rounded over spot for the reverse gas station knife fight grip. Comfortable. Let's close it up and take a look at this action. So you have a very minimal flipper tab with that same nice fine cut jimping that grips the finger nicely. It's canted back, so it's comfortable. I think the pivot's a little bit behind the flipper, and the detent is very crisp. When you break that detent, this blade comes flying out. It's riding on cage ceramic bearings. It's not a drop shut knife, but I'm perfectly fine with that. It rockets out. The action is the star of the show for the Aion. Very snappy, very quick. I'm not the biggest flipper only fan, but it was fun to carry this one and flip this one. If you love flippers, you'll love this one. Now let's close it up, take a look at the handle area. You have several different facets. Your top scale is their proprietary OAL aluminum. It's super aluminum, supposed to be stronger, I think more flexible. And the whatever on top, I don't know if it's an anodizing or whatever, but it's much stronger. It doesn't scratch up as easy as regular anodized aluminum. If you see here, you have this facet here. That's kind of more of a aesthetic thing here. Then you have it here. And then I don't know if you can see it, but there's just a little bit of a high spot here. You can kind of see it in different lights. I can see it right now, right here. Just kind of breaking those two sections up. And as you can see, they have the pivot and body screws hidden by putting this OAL aluminum scale on top. And it's somewhat very close to a clamshell construction. It's not completely touching. However, the way this is set up, you can see they got chamfers everywhere. There's no sharp areas. This is softened a whole lot. So whenever I was bearing down into wood and stuff, the fat of my hand wasn't falling into this gap like say you would on this Ontario Rat 1. And it's not terrible, but every little thing makes a knife more and more comfortable. And that's something I noticed right away. Whenever I was squeezing really hard, I wasn't noticing any discomfort from here. And just like we talked about earlier, Ostap is big on symmetry. And if you look, you got the same exact everything on both sides. You have a deep carry pocket clip that goes all the way to the end, mounted at the butt of the knife, and it is reversible. Excellent. If you look in here, you have skeletonized inset stainless steel liners and backspacer right there. So that is going to bring the weight up a little bit, but like I said, they have heavily skeletonized it, and the OAL aluminum is very light stuff. So being this is a little bit over an 8-inch knife, it's still rather lightweight at 3.38 ounces, and that's because of how narrow and streamlined this one is. Now, it would have been nice to see, kind of like on the Duron, I know this is a frame lock, but you do not have a liner on the show side. And this thing is extremely lightweight, lighter than this one. And they're comparable in size, at least in length. But having that extra stainless steel liner on this side is going to make it just a little bit back butt heavy. That's where your balance point is, just at the back portion of that little choil area that they made. Not terrible, but it could have been better. The lockup on my liner lock is around 50%, maybe closer to 60%. Access to the lock bar is good. This comes down a little bit lower. They got a chamfer on the lock bar right there with some step milled lines there that give it a little bit of texture, grip, whatever you want to call it. And for me, it's more comfortable to do it that way, but you can use your thumb. It probably wouldn't bother you at all. But for me, I just prefer using this portion. It's just comfortable, and that's just how I do it now, so I don't think twice about it. Your lockup is rock solid. There's no up and down, no left or right. Now time for some quick size comparisons. It's in the middle of the Ontario Rat 1 and 2. And next to two other Ostap Hell designs, it's identical in length to the Real Steel G5 Metamorph, and it's just a little bigger than the Concept Arcus. And it's a little shorter than the Beg Knives Quaken, and it's a little longer than the Oknife Duron. And lastly, it's a hair shorter than the Spyderco PM2, and it's pretty much identical in length to the Hogue Ritter full-size RSK. And being that absolutely no knife's perfect, what are my nitpicks and complaints? I would have loved it if they would have brought this plunge grind all the way back here so I could have all that as sharpening life, but you can see it kind of comes to about right here, so you could get about 2 to 3 sharpenings before you can run into that thicker portion. And you can either do something about it or run into it. Could possibly ruin your stones. Next thing, these are T6 hardware on this outside. I would have loved to see them all be T8. Even though I've never had any issues with their screws, it's just always nicer. They don't strip out as easy as T6 do. I think it would have really been nice if they wouldn't have put the stainless steel liner on the show side. That would have helped balance the knife out a little bit better. And they could have taken it even a step further and making this just a locking liner, not a full liner in here, just to where the lock bars screw down into maybe the aluminum into something. Then that would have really balanced it out perfectly. But that said, like I said, it's still a very lightweight knife, hard size. Other than that, like I said in the beginning, if you are a flipper fan, you will absolutely love this one. I'm a fan of Ostap Hell's designs. I like these streamlined knives when they work. This one works great, just like the Real Steel Metamorph series. I've always thought this was a great little knife, especially if you like these type of streamlined designs. Another reason why I absolutely loved the Concept Arcus. Now this one's flipper only as well, and I still enjoy this one quite a bit. So it's just going to depend on your preferences. And if nothing I talked about was a deal breaker for you, then yeah, I can recommend it. Now, one thing, I can't find the price on this knife at all. Like I said, it's a Kickstarter campaign knife. And the only thing I see whenever I click on the things is for $1, you can pre-order one basically. But if I had to take a guess, it's going to be fairly affordable. I would say kind of similar to the price of the Duron. They both are in Nitro V steel. This one's a little bit longer, and this one's a collaboration with Ostap Hell, so I'm not too sure on that. But they usually price them accordingly. Now, they also, being that they're doing a Kickstarter campaign, they have 3 different variations. You have the OAL aluminum with Nitro V. Then they have 2 premium ones. One has titanium scales with a hand rub satin M390 blade. And then they have a super fancy pants churched up version that has zircotized scales with an M390 blade. So those, of course, will be a decent bit more expensive than this one for obvious reasons. I think this one's a good offering. I like this OAL aluminum stuff. It doesn't scratch up easy at all. I mean, I've tried to scratch it on the Duron, and so far I still have no scratches on it. So I'd love to hear y'all thoughts on this one. Do y'all like these streamlined compact knives, or are they not your thing? At least they didn't leave out the lefties on this one. And that's going to do it for today's video. Like I said, I will have the Kickstarter campaign link down below in the description. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, you can leave those down below, and I'll do my best to get back with you. I hope every single one of y'all is having a fantastic day today. And remember, keep these blades sharp. Smile more. Peace.